if there was ever a way, if there was ever a way to make it okay for a first responder to have mental health that was not a negative stigma, it would be fantastic. Again, it goes back to we can't call 911 because we are 911. But what happens when 911 goes down? And so it has to be okay for EMS, fire, police officers to be able to say, I need help without fear of recourse or fear of losing their income for their families, because these guys are truly giving it everything they've got. And it's the only thing they know how to do is give it all they've got. Roughly 20 some odd years ago, I was traveling home late one night, and it was a really wet and stormy night, and I witnessed a very bad vehicle accident where multiple people were injured severely. And I had no training. I didn't know what to do. One guy had both of his legs cut off at the knee, and the other one was jammed in an engine compartment. There were people that were stuck inside a vehicle. And anyway, one person lost their life. I did what I could. I was so frustrated that I couldn't do more. And so I promised myself right then and there that I never wanted to be in a position again where I could not render aid and make a difference. For anybody in EMS, it just is second nature to us to want to help and want to do everything we can in our power to save lives. So anyway, in a nutshell, that's why I decided to join EMS, so that I could make a difference. One, two, so that I could be prepared if anything were to happen in my family, to my loved ones. What I have learned in the past 12 years is that anybody that tells you they're not struggling mentally in EMS, they're lying to you. We all have to battle what we see on a day-to-day basis somehow. There's no way that you can take what we see and what we deal with and be able to just forget it. It all goes somewhere. You see everything, from people dying in your arms, from kids dying in your arms, to spouses dying behind the wheel of a car, to people getting stuck in wood chippers, to tractor accidents where guys get caught in PTOs and rip their arms off, to a lot of suicides, a lot of called out at 2 a.m. for babies not breathing. You never know from 1 second to the next what you're going to be called to do. And so there is always a heightened sense of what's going to happen today. And at first, when I first started my career, I loved it because I was able to make a difference in people's lives. And you can see that. There seems to be a sense of relief when someone is calling for help and they need help more than they've ever needed it in their life. And you run through the door and they just know that you're there to help and that you are going to aid their situation. And many times we can aid them, or we can at least get them to the higher level of care that they need. And so that was very satisfying for me. And I absolutely loved it. When you're confronted with death immediately, you have to go to a spot in your mind that it is nothing I did. It was his time. There was nothing that I could do at that point to save his life. No doctor, no emergency room, nothing was going to save his life. And you have to be okay with that and move on. So you put that in a file in the back of your brain that says nothing I could do there, nothing you can do about it. So you just file it away. And so that file where you keep putting these memories and these traumatic experiences over the years just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I can only remember in my 12 years twice where I was asked to speak with a counselor, or if I was asked if I was okay after traumatic calls. Because in EMS, that is not it. At least in my experience, mental health is we don't look after each other's mental health. We make sure we're okay in the moment, but you always go home after every call, and oftentimes your wife and kids are asleep in the house, and it's dark, and you sit there with nothing but the memories of what you just experienced. And sometimes, as I got later on in life and the years were piling up, I started losing control of my thoughts, and it put me in a really dark place. Um, Dark enough that I started withdrawing from my wife and kids. I started withdrawing from friends. It was affecting my job. The best way to describe it is I was just living in fear. I got to the point where my pager went off. Say my pager went off and I was paged to a traffic accident with injuries. My brain was racing. Was this my daughter? Was this or one of my kids? Was this my wife? Was this my friend? And I before I could even show up at the call, my brain had already convinced myself that I was going to get there and see my daughter halfway hanging out of a car. You know what I mean? And so I didn't know how to cope with that. I didn't know how to deal with that. Logically, it never was my daughter. It never was my wife. It never was any of my kids. But what if? There was always that what if. What do I do? And I had convinced myself that if it was one of my kids, I wasn't going to be able to deal with it. I was approaching that point of breaking, and I didn't know who to talk to. There were several people in the EMS organization that I respected a whole lot. And one night I went and asked one of them, and I said, "Hey, what?" It was actually one of my supervisors, and I says, "What do we do when I need to talk to somebody about EMS and the things I've seen?" And he kind of laughed a little bit and slapped me on the back. And I said, "No, I'm serious. What do we do? What I feel like I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. My mental health is declining. What do we do?" And he says, "Oh yeah, well, we should talk about it." In fact, he said, "Tell me about it." I just said, "Well, I'm having terrors. I wake up in the middle of the night pulling my daughter out of a vehicle that's on fire, and I'm doing CPR on my wife, and I'm having these. I wake up and I'm just completely soaked with sweat because I just can't thrive." And he's like, "Yeah, you got it pretty bad, man, but it'll go away. You'll be all right." And that was the advice I got from my supervisor. So, just like every other time in EMS, you suck it up. Ironically, even when I was at my worst, when the pager went off and someone else needed me, you just snap right into the role. The medics that I've worked with, all the EMTs, the good ones, they're so cool under pressure. They just, when the pager goes off and the tones ring out, they're just cool as a cucumber. The training is just pounded into you. We know what to do. We know what to do in heart attacks. We know what to do in traumatic situations. And we've become really good at our jobs. And so that was the only relief at times that I was getting from my mental issues, is when someone really needed me. And so it became almost a drug to me. I needed those endorphin hits, that dopamine hit, because when I was racing down the highway to get to someone that was in a cardiac event, it allowed my mind to focus on the problems at hand. And until that call was done and they were taken care of, I didn't have to think about my problems. Anyway, this is the craziest story. So they always tell you to seek help, but I was never told where to go to seek help. I can't tell you how many hundreds of times in our trainings they talk about you need to talk to people. But who do you talk to? It was one day, it's about 4 o'clock. I walked in the front door and the lady's sitting there at the desk, and I said, I need help. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I need help. I said, I'm in a really dark place. Um, I am not thriving, and I need to talk to somebody before something bad happens. And she says, well, we don't work that way. You need to be referred to by a doctor. And I said, listen, ma'am, I've been a volunteer EMT in this community now for almost 12 years. I said, I've given my life to this. Everybody tells me I need to talk to somebody. There's nobody here for me to talk to. And I'm here to tell you that if I don't talk to someone really quick, something bad is going to happen to me. I don't know what that is. And I remember getting teary eyed. I remember thinking that my whole world was just dark and black and that everybody was dying around me and there was no point in going on. And she looks at me and she says, you're absolutely right. We are supposed to be helping. And within an hour, she had me on the phone with a counselor in Idaho who saved my life, literally saved my life. She did not, we did not go over anything at that time, but she was really good at letting me know that there is help and we're going to get you help. And you need to understand that this is just something that you have to deal with for a few minutes and we're going to get you some help and it's going to pass. And so I remember feeling that there was help out there for me and that I was going to get through this. The craziest thing in the world. So they lined me up with this guy, this counselor, and it was the next day. And he calls me and we're on a Zoom call where I'm sitting in my pickup truck outside of my office. And he says, tell me what's going on. So I just unloaded. I started telling him about every horrific call I had ever been on. And he sat there literally for a half hour, his eyes just big as silver dollars, looking at me. And I remember him saying, well, is there any way you can just not think about it? And I just looked at him like, what? It was absolutely worthless. Absolutely worthless. I had just wasted 40 minutes of my time talking to a guy that I thought was there to help me. Um, so I just realized at that point that I thought everything was hopeless. And so I ended that call with that guy and called the first lady back from Idaho. I called her back and I said, look, there's no hope. I said, that was a complete waste of time. And she told me that a lot of times you need to be paired up with a counselor that can meet your needs. And sometimes the first counselor isn't the right one, which I didn't know that. Um, so she put me in touch with another counselor that exact day, and that that counselor saved my life. Again, it was night and day difference. Helped me to be able to process things and talk through things and be able to realize that there is life after trauma and there is life after loss and that things aren't always going to be bad and to focus on the good. I check in with them now every month and we go over things, we hash out things. But it's been a wonderful experience. How on earth do you protect someone that sees awful every day? And I've thought about this a lot and a lot and a lot. The answer to that is you have to have a huge support system for EMS. And right now I'm telling you, it's not there. There's nothing there. It's a real problem. And I don't know if I've had it as bad as they have it. I can only speak for me. But to have someone explain to you that this is normal, that what you have seen is traumatic, and that you are doing well just coping with it the way you're coping with it. Now that you understand that you're normal, let's give you some tools to help you process what you've seen. Let's give you some tools to allow you to sleep at night. Let's give you some tools that when you wake up in those cold sweats, or that when those thoughts start to come and you start to panic, when your pager goes off, let's give you some tools to help you manage those thoughts. You can start to live your life again. Um, and so I think the thing that we as first responders need to understand is that there's help out there. The help is there. I don't know how to tell you where you're at in your life or in your service, how to get it. I just had to take the bull by the horns and go find it. So yeah, I just remember saying, man, I wish if there was a first responder hotline that a fireman or a medic or a police officer could call, and have immediate help. That I think that would be outstanding.